A daring rescue. No one had ever flown a helicopter that far up Mount Everest, but someone had to try. If not, a climber would die. Several pilots were asked to do it. They said no, but one man said yes. His name was Madden KC. He was a pilot in the Nepal Air Force, and he was ready to risk his life to help a stranded climber. KC got the call on May 11, 1996. He was asked to rescue a man named Beck Weathers. Weathers was in a base camp at 20,000 feet. A day earlier, Weathers had been even higher. He had been near the 29,028-foot summit. That is the highest spot on Earth. But Weathers' eyes could not stand the high altitude. He had become nearly blind, so he had sat down to wait while Rob Hall, the group's leader, took others to the top. But Hall never came back. A big storm moved in. Hall and a few others were trapped near the summit. 8 of them died that night. Weathers, too, almost died. The snow and wind blew all around him. The temperature dropped to 35 degrees below zero. For 14 hours he lay in the snow, barely breathing. Ice covered his face, but he wasn't ready to die. He thought about his wife and children. That gave him new strength. Somehow he picked himself up. He started walking. At 5 p.m. the next afternoon, he stumbled into one of the base camps. No one there could believe it. They had thought for sure he was dead. They had even called his wife to tell her the bad news. Almost no one lives through a night on Mount Everest. Weathers himself didn't expect to get through it. The climbers carried Weathers down to a lower camp. His arm was frozen. Much of his face was black with frostbite, and he still could not see. There was no way he could walk down the rest of the mountain, and it was too steep and icy for others to carry him any further. His only hope was to be flown out. That's where Madden KC came in. KC's mission was to fly to the base camp at 20,000 feet. To get there, KC would have to fly over a 22,000-foot ridge. He would land on a small patch of snow. He would pick up Weathers. Then he would fly out again. The risks were huge. First, his helicopter was built to fly to only 20,000 feet. He would have to take it higher. Next, he might face winds and blowing snow. And then there was the landing. KC had to land in just the right spot, otherwise the helicopter would crash. KC knew the dangers he faced. Still, he got ready to go. He waited for the wind to calm down, then he took off. Somehow, he made it over the ridge. The climbers at the base camp had marked the landing spot with an X. They had used a soft drink to color the snow. KC saw the spot and flew toward it. Lying in the base camp, Weathers did not have much hope. He felt the chance of a rescue by air was 0. Even as KC drew near, Weathers was not hopeful. I didn't think he'd ever land, Weathers said. It just seemed too dangerous. As Weathers said, KC had 0 room for error. Climber Ed V thought the same thing. He saw KC come in and circle. We thought he was going to give up, said V, but KC circled around again. He landed perfectly. Weathers said it was like a feather settling on the snow. Weathers was thrilled. But then he thought of Maku Gao. Gao was a climber from Taiwan. Gao, too, had had trouble near the top of the mountain. Like Weathers, he had lived through the night. He was at the base camp now, too, and he was doing even worse. KC had come to rescue Weathers, but he could only fly out one climber at a time, so Weathers told him to take Gao. It seemed like the thing to do at the time, Weathers later said. As soon as KC lifted off, Weathers lost hope. I didn't think he was coming back, he said. But Madden KC did come back. Once more he flew up over the ridge. Once more he made the tricky landing on the X. This time Weathers got in, and KC flew him safely down the mountain. Both Gao and Weathers lived. Gao lost his arms, feet, and nose to frostbite. Weathers lost his nose, much of his right arm, and his left fingers. But his sight came back, and both he and Gao were grateful just to be alive. KC was later asked if he had had any fear during the rescue mission. He said no. He said he had a job to do, and he did it. But then he said, I am more fearful about it now that I think about it. As for Beck Weathers, he said he would never climb Everest again. The only way I'd go back to see the mountain is from the seat of a helicopter, he said. And if he did that, he would want Madden KC to be his pilot. That's a guy with a big heart, said Weathers.